Doctors recommend regular exercise to manage stress. We recommend that you just watch the Bengals defense. Same result. Elevated heart rate, yelling, "I can't do this," and the occasional tears. The Justin Kinner Show, your official cardiac clinic for the Bengals.
All right, everybody, we welcome you in live here. It's the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun food, sports, and spirits. Jason Fitz, Yahoo Sports. He's going to join us coming up here just around the corner. Joe Burrow obviously getting closer and closer to making a return for the Bengals, but what does that mean for their playoff chances? We'll discuss that with Jason coming up around the corner. We'll also talk about the college football playoff rankings. No shakeup up at the top last night, and that's what I want to open up with before we get to Jason coming up here around the corner. I do want to dive into the Reds. Terry Francona was, of course, in the running for National League Manager of the Year. He came up just short, but I want to talk about the direction of the Reds with Terry Francona, because there's one the mindset I had when the Reds, were able to convince Terry Francona to come out of retirement was, well, man, you don't do that if you're planning on continuing to operate as if you're being run by David Bell. Well, I was wrong, because it's exactly what the Reds are doing. The Reds are running this organization as if they have David Bell at manager, not Terry Francona. So what the hell was the point of going to get Terry Francona? So that's kind of where I'm at as far as that's concerned. But again, the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun food, sports, and spirits. So last night, the college football playoff rankings came out, and this is why I disagree. Every time people say, who cares about the first couple of weeks of the rankings reveal? Who cares about that, right? I get, people say that all the time. I think that they matter a lot. I think it matters a ton, because you learn about the committee. You learn about what the committee values. You learn about what the committee, how they view the college football playoff landscape. And I think that's important, because it helps you kind of analyze and figure out what your team needs to do to accomplish their ultimate goal, which is, of course, yes, to win a national championship, but to position themselves to win a national championship, they have to position themselves the best way possible when it comes to seeding in the college football playoff. So last night, the rankings come out, and it's been the same now for the last couple of weeks. In fact, the AP poll doesn't change at the top at all. Ohio State, Indiana, Texas A&M, Alabama, Georgia, same exact thing for the second straight week when the college football playoff rankings, Ohio State, Indiana, Texas A&M, Alabama, and Georgia. It all stayed the exact same. So what does that mean? Like, when you talk about what you learn from the committee, what does the committee, what is the committee telling you? Well, the committee, to me, when I sit back and I view this, the committee is telling you that they don't care about strength of schedule. They don't care about challenging yourself in the non-con. They don't care about who you play. This is obviously a very eye test heavy committee. They know Ohio State's the best team in the country, so it doesn't matter what anybody else does. They feel like they know that Indiana is better than Texas A&M, and I don't know that, but the committee's telling you that they are, because there is no reason why Indiana should still be at number 2. Texas A&M should at the very least be at number 2. Texas A&M blows out pretty much every one of their opponents. Every one of their opponents collectively is better, and it's a tougher strength of schedule than Indiana. Indiana just narrowly beat a 5-loss Penn State team, and they stay at number 2. Texas A&M goes on the road and beats a top 25 team on the road, and you just keep them at number 3. Don't even move them at all. I know we don't care right now. There's not a lot of drama because all is well in Buckeye land. Our team is the number 1 team in the country. I just think it's a weird dilemma. I think it's a weird dynamic, the way that the committee has gone about this. I'm not angry that Indiana's at number 2. It just doesn't make sense. The committee, they make such a big deal about challenging yourself in the non-conference, your strength of schedule. Remember, they put out before the season began this new strength of schedule metric, and they did this because there was a lot of programs threatening to stop challenging themselves in the non-con. They're just going to put together an Indiana-type schedule. If you remember, Indiana got a lot of heat at the beginning of the season because, well, this was their non-con. They played Old Dominion. They played Kennesaw State and Indiana State. And guess what? Their non-con for the next 3 or 4 years, it looks the exact same as this. Indiana will never challenge themselves in the non-con, and why should they? You play nobody in the non-con, and you're the number 2 team in the country, right? Texas A&M goes on the road and beats top 10 Notre Dame in the non-con. and they're sitting at number 3 and they can't jump a team that's literally played nobody or beat anybody. I understand this isn't, I don't do the whole SEC bias game, and no one's going to feel sorry for Texas A&M because they're an SEC team. And I'm not really asking you to feel bad for them. I just always like to view things of, if my team was in that position, yeah, I'd be pretty dang upset too. I'd be pretty annoyed with that too. So I think it's wrong where they have Texas A&M placed. I think it's wrong where they have Indiana placed. Now, I'm not going to sit here and scream from a mountaintop because I just think that the number 2 team and the number 3 team should just be switched, because that's honestly how I feel. Like, they just need to switch them. Lane Kiffin said it best. I know we talked about it on yesterday's show, but Lane Kiffin basically came out and just said, hey, I don't understand Texas A&M. They're at number 3 no matter what. If they wouldn't have played Notre Dame, they'd be number 3. They played Notre Dame and beat them. They're number 3. So what the hell's the point of playing Notre Dame then? So there you go. Ron Howard says it will. So Ron Howard's on the Justin Kinner Show Facebook page. He says it will work itself out in the Big Ten championship game. I get that, Ron, but we're not in the Big Ten championship game yet. We still have a month of the season left to go. And the rankings are supposed to be put together based on the information that to this point. It's not, we're putting out our rankings based on where we think these teams are going to finish. It's supposed to be where these teams are at this point of the season. So I think it's absolutely stupid to have Indiana at number 2. They struggled. This is what I said this yesterday. Indiana still has this little underdog type good guy vibe feel to them, where they're everyone's favorite underdog right now. So Indiana got a pass for struggling to beat a 5-loss team this past weekend. It's a pass that Ohio State would not have gotten. It's a pass that Texas A&M sure as hell wouldn't have gotten, because Texas A&M's not being rewarded for beating legitimate top 25 teams on the road, and Indiana's not being held accountable for barely escaping with the W, a 1-possession win against a team that fired their head coach and has lost 6 straight games now. So, yeah, I do have a problem with the way that the committee is going about doing all this and putting it all together, but nonetheless. All right. I'm Justin Kinner. It's the Justin Kinner Show, 1410 ESPN Radio. Something else I'm going to discuss with Jason Fitz coming up. We talked about Mendoza yesterday. The one thing I was starting to get a little defensive of with our guy Julian saying is that everyone is saying, oh, man, Mendoza is now the favorite to win the Heisman because he finally had his Heisman moment, right? Fernando Mendoza on the season has thrown for 2,300 yards. All right. He's thrown for 26 touchdowns. He's thrown 5 interceptions on the season. And he played 3.5 quarters of bad football, leads his team on a scoring drive, and that's his Heisman moment. And he's the favorite to go win the Heisman Trophy. I don't understand that. Julian saying he has less interceptions, about the same amount of touchdowns, 80% completion percentage. I mean, the guy's efficient beyond belief. He's thrown for more yards, completed more passes. He's a more efficient quarterback, and he's the quarterback on the number 1 team in the country. And the reason that Julian Sayin doesn't necessarily have a Heisman moment is because they take care of business the way that they should. They beat teams 70-0, 38-14, 34-0, 34-16, 42-3, 37-9, 70-0. Yeah, as long as Ohio State and Julian Sayin continue to dominate their opponents, they're never going to be in a position for him to have a Heisman moment, and that's because of the good quality work that they put in and he puts in. Indiana did not play good football for 3.5 quarters against a 5-loss team. Mendoza did not play good football for 3.5 quarters against a 5-loss, 6-loss team now. And now he's supposed to be rewarded because he had 1 or 2 legit good drives in the 4th quarter and didn't play a full 4-quarter game like Julian Sayin and every other contender does. Julian Sayin, to me, thank you, Mr. Big Ten Commissioner Andy Schroyer, Sayin is the best. I think Julian Sayin should be the Heisman frontrunner. And I know a lot of people out there say, well, he's only a freshman, or he's a whatever. What do you consider him anyways? You know what I mean? He didn't play last year. He's, obviously transferred from Alabama. So he's a redshirt freshman or whatever. So people say, okay, he's not good enough. He can't win the Heisman because he's only a freshman. That, to me, makes it even more impressive what he's doing. Okay, well, you know what? He has Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate, so that should work against him. I think the fact that a redshirt freshman quarterback comes in, no experience, and gets thrown to the wolves on a defending national champion and somehow has led them to an even better spot than where they were a year ago at this time. I think the fact that he hasn't crashed the boat, that he hasn't wrecked the boat with all the weapons that he has, I think that's a great thing. I think that is even more impressive. Oh, he's only good because he has those weapons. Well, if he was bad, those weapons wouldn't be getting the football, and he wouldn't be finding ways to. I mean, Jeremiah Smith is getting a touchdown in almost every game. I hate when people act like, oh, man, bum quarterbacks could throw the ball to Jeremiah Smith. That is not accurate. That's not true. That's not true. Is what it is. Yes, it will. It'll take care of itself. Julian Sand, he goes to Ann Arbor, and he puts up big numbers against Michigan, and they close out the regular season. That'll be his Heisman moment, if you will. I debated this with Keith Byers on his show earlier today, and he brought up a good point. He's not a fan of Heisman moments. He doesn't even and he joked, and he said, look, he goes, because him not winning a Heisman was a result of a Heisman moment for somebody else. Keith Byers was the most dominant player that season that he should have won that Heisman. But a Heisman moment stole a Heisman trophy away from Keith Byers because, oh my gosh, it was just an unbelievable Hail Mary. And it was an unbelievable Hail Mary. It was an unbelievable pass, but Doug Flutie did not have a better season that year than Keith Byers. But because he had that Heisman moment, I think a Heisman moment is ridiculous. I mean, I think it's cool. Don't get me wrong. If you are a legit Heisman favorite and you have big moments, yes, but I think big moments sometimes also are created by not taking care of business earlier in the game. Julian saying he's not having these big clutch moments late in games because he's taking care of business in quarters 1 through 3.5. Like, what are the most, and that's the thing too, like Heisman moments. What are some of the biggest Heisman moments in college football history that you can think of? I know a guy that we all as Buckeye fans can't stand on College game day is obviously Desmond Howard. But if you go back to 1999, we all know he has that 93-yard punt return, right, against Ohio State. He does the Heisman pose in the end zone. And everyone knows that that's one of the things, because of how much that was replayed and because it was in the game, the rivalry, that springboarded Desmond Howard to go on to win that Heisman in 90, and I said 99, 91. You know, you think about Reggie Bush. Reggie Bush was so dang dominant that entire season back in 2005, and I guess he was a Heisman winner, then wasn't a Heisman winner. Now he's a Heisman winner again. But you remember that, like, he had that huge run. I think it was against Fresno. It was like that explosion. I mean, again, that was one of the biggest plays that season. But again, that was still weird. I don't even know if I can. It was such an amazing play, yes, but to me, it was hard for me to put that as a Heisman moment. But that's one of the more popular ones that keeps popping up on everybody's list when we polled everybody today. Lamar Jackson in 2016, he had that late fourth quarter 75-yard drive against Virginia that helped secure not just the win, but it helped define that season where basically he just carried his team in every clutch moment possible throughout. That's why Lamar Jackson was a legit threat to go on to potentially win 2 Heismans, only something only one player in the history of college football has done, Ohio State's own, and Archie Griffin. So, like, these Heisman moments, I just think they're overrated. And I don't know if Fernando Mendoza had a Heisman moment this past week. You can't light a house on fire, put out your own fire, and then say, hey, look at me, I'm a hero. That's what I joked with Byers on his show earlier. Me and Byers disagreed. Byers did believe that Mendoza had a Heisman moment this past week. And I said, well, Keith, my only pushback on that is, like, for instance, if I'm walking down the street and I look over and I see that a house is on fire and I go and I save a family out of that house, I'm a hero. But what if I went to that family's house and I lit their house on fire, then helped them out of the house? How am I a hero? I'm the a-hole that lit their house on fire to begin with, right? That's Mendoza. Not really calling him an a-hole. I'm just saying he lit the house on fire for 3.5 quarters. He created his own problem that he had to get himself out of. Had he done what Julian Sayin did and dominated for 4 full quarters, threw for over 300 yards, threw for 4 touchdowns, there's no need to have to save someone from a burning building because Julian Sayin doesn't have to light the house on fire to be labeled a hero. And that's what Mendoza did. And that's the problem I have. That was not a Heisman moment. He should not be the Heisman favorite. And Julian Sayin should not be punished in this Heisman race because he kicks ass from the very first kickoff of the game all the way to the end. I don't know why I'm getting fired up. Let's all calm down. Let's all calm down. I'm Justin Kinner. It's the Justin Kinner Show with you here on 1410 ESPN Radio. 937-518-1410. What's your most memorable Heisman moment? I mean, I think of that Troy Smith game against Michigan where he's scrambling all over the field and he turns and reverses from the right side and turns to the left and just chucks it downfield and gets that big touchdown late in that game against Michigan. Like, some of those are Heisman moments to me. What was the most memorable Heisman moment? Last year, right? We talked about him, Travis Hunter. I can't think of one thing that he did last year that was a Heisman moment. What was his Heisman moment? What was the last Heisman moment that you could think of? Leave it in the chat. I'm not really trying to debate with you guys. I guess I'm just curious. When you guys, because we all do it. Oh, man, what's his Heisman moment? What's his Heisman moment? I guess the question I have is, what was the last memorable Heisman moment? And some of you may put Mendoza there, and that's fine. That's your opinion. Is that the last Heisman moment, the most memorable one? What was the last memorable Heisman moment that you could think of? Head to the Justin Kidder Show Facebook page, leave it in the chat, and we'll discuss more when we come back with Jason Fitz from Yahoo Sports. That's coming up next right here on 1410 ESPN Radio.
Your family might not understand why you're still mad about a 2019 play call, but we do. 1410 ESPN Radio, where you can argue about sports without worrying about getting uninvited to Thanksgiving. ESPN 1410 Wing AM weather.
All right, it's the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun food, sports, and spirits. Appreciate Jay Morrison hopping on with us this week again. Does a great job covering your Cincinnati Bengals. We talked about the possible return of not the possible. We know Joe Burrow's returning, but the possibility of the earliest that we could potentially see him, which varies between Thanksgiving, varies between the Buffalo Bills. I mean, there's a lot of obviously things out there that can lead to when we could potentially see him. So we're going to continue talking Bengals. We'll talk Browns. We'll talk college football as the rankings came out, the playoff rankings. Number 2 came out last night. And joining us now, Jason Fitz, Yahoo Sports. Jason, happy Wednesday. Welcome, sir.
Well, thanks for having me. Yeah, it's an exciting time. You got Burrow, you got Ohio State. There's things to be, I didn't mention the Browns. You got a lot to be happy about. Didn't mention the Browns.
The Browns at this point, there used to be, you can't see it in this shot, but before I had a nice little Browns helmet and I had to replace it with the Ohio State helmet, as you can see. It's about time we start talking about the winning teams here in the state of Ohio for once. So
yeah, I don't blame you. I don't blame you. But hey, look on the bright side. You got the number 1 team in all the land, and I think clearly the number 1 team in all the land, and that's something to celebrate.
Let's open with college football. Keith Byers, who played at Ohio State, he's sitting over here. He just knocked out his show for us here in Dayton. And I was, we're debating Heisman moments. I think our Heisman moments, so we're talking about Heisman moments, Mendoza, Indiana. We had a disagreement. He believes that was a Heisman moment for Mendoza in Indiana this past week in their win against Penn State. I did not. I know it was a big moment. That was a heck of a throw. It was an exciting finish. But I said, if I'm walking down the street and I see a nice house and I go and light that house on fire and then I help put that fire out, I can't be a hero for putting that fire out, right? Like that's what he did. He helped start a fire against Penn State. He played poorly for 3.5 quarters. I'm not going to prop him up and reward him for making a big play to escape a game that shouldn't have been coming down to that point to begin with that he played a role in. Where are you with this Heisman moment with Mendoza in Indiana this past week?
Look, you couldn't be more wrong, dude. It is a Heisman moment because it's look, it wasn't a Heisman game, but it was a Heisman moment. And I actually had one national media college football person tell me a couple of days ago, there are still a ton of people in the country that haven't even watched Indiana football. They just don't want to believe that Indiana football is good. There are a ton of fans out there that are casual fans that don't realize Penn State's having a terrible year. Didn't realize Penn State was on a losing streak. And then there's these moments where you get the entire country watching by the numbers. Everybody's just suddenly flocking to it. It's like, oh my God, Penn State's going to pull off the upset. That was genuinely an introduction for some fans across the country to Mendoza. They didn't watch the rest of the game. And this is one of the problems that we have with red zone coverage. In a red zone world, one thing that bothers me so much is you'll hear a national media guy say, oh, that quarterback looked great. And it's like, tell me you were watching red zone because you saw the 3 touchdown passes. You didn't see the rest of the game. You're right that I think Fernando Mendoza and the Indiana offense honestly had mostly a forgettable day against Penn State. But for that drive to start with the sack and then lead down the field the way it led with some of the incredible throws, including the touchdown catch, one of the best. I mean, Gus Johnson hitting puberty in the middle of the call because he was so excited. Like, that's a Heisman moment. And unfortunately, I think it's a bummer we need those. Like, you could make a good argument if you're Julian Sayin or Ty Simpson. You're looking around saying, hey, look what I'm doing. But you don't have that big, we've been tested and I needed a 2-minute drive and everybody was watching. It's a testament to Ohio State and, a bit of their schedule that they haven't been tested. But that's why you just don't have, Julian Sayin doesn't have a big Heisman moment because he didn't walk into the season with a bunch of hype. He didn't walk into the season with an already existing Heisman campaign. He walked into the season with Ryan Day brilliantly selling sort of we still have a quarterback battle. We'll see. You can't go from quarterback battle to I'm the Heisman favorite without some sort of mammoth, epic, oh my God win with an oh my God moment. And because Ohio State's been so dominant, Julian Sayin just doesn't have that yet.
Yeah, and that was the exact same defense a week ago, 300 yards, 4 touchdowns. They didn't play poor enough to set up a Heisman moment opportunity. But regardless, yes, the puberty call from Gus Johnson, the call heard around the world this past weekend, that's for sure. But the rankings came out last night, and I thought, I was curious to see what the committee was going to do with Indiana just because, hey, that's a 5-loss team that they needed 4 full quarters. They didn't look great the whole time. You had Texas A&M, who's coming off of a win against another top 25 opponent on the road in Missouri. I was expecting to see a possible flip between those two. The committee stayed pat. Are you surprised that there's been no movement? There's been no drama when it comes to the layout of these rankings so far.
I think it tells you that this is a stubborn committee and it's a eye test committee. We know that, right? So they already told you that they believe Texas A&M wasn't number 1 in week 1, even though the metrics, like we talked about, strength of record, which is an important one. How would the average top 25 do against your team? That's what strength of resume is, or record strength is now calling it for the committee. But Texas A&M is number one in the country on strength of resume. Strength of schedule, Texas A&M is higher than both Indiana and Ohio State, and remaining strength of schedule, Texas A&M is higher. And I don't think any of that matters. The committee's telling you, hey, we watch. And like, this is the great argument everybody has. Well, what has Ohio State shown you? I guess, man, you just got to watch football. And at some point you watch football, even if you're watching a group of bullies take on a group of fat fifth graders in dodgeball, you can still see who's good, right? Like, and so, yeah, has Ohio State been tested? No. Has Ohio State played against the level of opponents that Texas A&M has played this year? No. Like, Texas A&M, by the metrics, the analytics with no leaning one way or the other, believes that Texas A&M has played a tougher schedule. And it doesn't matter because you still watch Ohio State. You're like, I don't know. They're big, they're fast, they're strong, they're efficient. They do everything the right way. They don't make a lot of mistakes. They're not in close games. Like, Ohio State's doing everything you need them to do. So I think what the committee is showing you is that they're stubborn, right? Like, they're stubborn about certain teams just belonging and certain teams not belonging. It's going to make it a really difficult path for a team like Vandy, for example, that's number 14. I don't know if Vandy, even if they win out, can Vandy get in the college football playoff? I don't know, because this is a stubborn committee. So we've seen that in their moves. And I don't think if all three teams win out, no matter what happens getting up to conference championship week, if all three teams win out, I think it's going to stay 1, 2, 3 just the way it is.
Lane Kiffin had an interesting comment. I think one of the most recent press conferences he did, he was asked about his thoughts just about the layout for the SEC, the poor victims of the SEC, right? But he said he looks at Texas A&M and he's just confused. He said, what's the point of playing Notre Dame? Because he believes that whether you play Notre Dame or not, Texas A&M is number 3. You beat Notre Dame, you're number 3. If you beat who the heck is that state, you're still at number 3. Same thing with Ohio State. If you played who was that state in week 1 or Texas in week 1, it didn't really impact anything as far as that goes. So he's basically asking, what's the point then? What is the point of challenging yourself in the non-con if these games aren't really going to have an impact? Number 1, 2, and 3. Number 2 didn't play anybody in the non-con. But you look at the top 3 teams, really those matchups didn't impact at all how the committee views these guys. I thought it was a fair question.
No, he's right. And the answer is there is no point to it other than growth of the game, and it's good for the sport. Like, okay. What I would love to see is, honestly, like right now in the NFL, 14 of the 17 games are the same for every team in every division. The only games that are different are based on where you finish. So the third place team in the AFC North will play 14 of the same 17 games against first as the other teams in the division, but they'll also play other third place teams. I wish we had that in college football. And what I think would make a lot of sense is if we did a series where at the end of the year, if you finished third in the SEC, the next year you're going to play the third place team in the Big Ten, the third place team in the ACC, and the third place team in the Big 12. Like, then we get the opportunity to see some of these guys against each other, and we get a better line in the sand of like, okay, how do you compare to how does this team compare to this team? But even at that, like, some years the third place team in the Big Ten is going to be really good. And some years the third place team in the ACC this year is going to be meh, right? Like, so even at that, there's no way to get schedule conformity. So, I mean, Lane's not wrong. Like, the real answer is don't schedule anybody, beat the snot out of everybody, and take care of your division. That's going to be the answer until it bites somebody in the butt. And then it will counter back to, like, we got to play people, right? Like, I don't think there's any right answer. I think it's just people chasing information. But Lane's not wrong. If I ran a college football program, I wouldn't schedule. I'd schedule Nashville Auto Diesel College every week, other than my conference schedule.
Yeah, and that's it. Just takes me back to number 2 team in the country, Indiana, and the way Kurt Sinetti put the schedule together. He got a lot of heat. Basically just, he took a shot at the SEC. That's what stirred the pot. But, basically, and you look at the Indiana schedule for the next 3 or 4 years, Penn State, people talked about them coming into the season. Their non-con is very weak for the next couple of years as well. So it is interesting seeing everyone's approach. Ohio State, though, Georgia, Alabama, they're in the Texas series right now. Do you see those series sticking? You think any of these teams kind of back out, or the egos of these programs say, hey, we're not going to be the ones that back out of this? Do you think that those series continue?
I think the hard part about it is, like you mentioned, the ego of the programs. I think the money in college football is so insane. At some level, it might not be coaches, but at some level, administrators understand that giving me those cross-conference weekend opening, season opening games, they matter. They matter for the entire publicity of the sport. So That's where you got to make a decision. Would you rather have the easy wins, or do you want to be part of the most landmark opening weekend in the sport? And I'm not sure that the Alabamas of the world don't want to be part of that, right? Like there's some level of look at college basketball. I know nobody's paying attention to college basketball, but like we have the Champions Classic series that come out in the Big Ten ACC Challenge and all these different things that exist. And like, yeah, you could argue that it's kind of pointless for a lot of these schools. Why go out and play it? But then when there's a big night like next week, Madison Square Garden, you got 4 blue bloods coming in to play each other because it's good for the promotion of the sport. It's good for everybody's bottom line. Like that's the part of it that I think even if Alabama and Ohio State came in and said, we don't want to do this anymore, the TV partners in the conferences would all then sit down and say, are we sure we don't want to do this? You really want this to not be you guys? Like, I think there is a little level of what's good for the gander is good for the goose.
Jason Fitz, Yahoo Sports, hanging out with us here. It's the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. Onto the NFL. Joe Burrow, they activated his 21-day window here, so he's going to be back sooner rather than later. This may sound like a goofy question because Joe Burrow is better than Joe Flacco. There's no doubt about it. But it appears in talking to Bengals fans and local media here that there's like a sense of, okay, he's trying to get back and rush back ahead of schedule. Let me ask you, the Bengals, how much different are they moving forward with Joe Burrow versus Joe Flacco with the way Joe Flacco has been playing? The team hasn't been losing because of the offensive side of the ball. They've been getting everything you could imagine and more from Joe Flacco at the quarterback position. I'm not saying big whoop, he's coming back, but I kind of am. What kind of impact is Joe Burrow coming back? What impact will it have on the Bengals when you consider all the deficiencies that this team still has?
I was talking to a smart former NFL defensive player the other day, and I said, hey, is Burrow going to fix the Bengals? And he literally texted me back and said, I don't know. What position is he playing on defense? And to your point, like, yeah, I would want Joe Burrow back too, because Joe Burrow makes the impossible feel possible. That's one of the greatest things about a quarterback is he gives you hope. He gives you hope every single week. But one of the most misguided things about the way we cheer and the way we cover the sport, all of us watch the sport, is we make it solely about a quarterback. And it's like, oh, yay, this quarterback comes back and everything's going to be fine. Lamar Jackson coming back is part of what's helped to fix the Ravens. But another part of that is they've gotten healthy in several other key spots on the defensive side of the ball over the period of weeks. We just don't talk about that because it's not Lamar, right? So Joe Burrow coming back gives everybody hope. But to your point, I would feel like I needed him if I was still watching Jake Browning play. But I've watched Joe Flacco play well enough to win me football games. This is that at some point you've got to expect the defense to step up and make the key stops. And that's where this thing is broken, where this thing is wildly broken. When you score 40-plus points and you lose, don't tell me that fixing the quarterback situation is going to make it better for you. It's just not. Like, the Bengals need an entire reset on one entire side of the ball. And I remember for several years where I was sitting there screaming the Bengals need an offensive line. And every year in the draft, they would draft offensive linemen, and it just wasn't working. Some teams are bad at identifying particular positions, right? So you just throw your hands up. Well, for whatever reason, the Bengals just haven't been able to identify, develop, or coach defensive talent for how many years? And that, by the way, ain't going to change in week whatever we're in, 10, 11 at the end. Like, middle of November, you weren't suddenly seeing an awakening of your talent on the defensive side of the ball. The Bengals season's lost. Like, so great, you get Joe in, and maybe you win a couple of games. Maybe you sneak your way into the playoffs, and then you get to watch a playoff game, and that's fun. But if you watch this Bengals team and then watch, I don't know, even the way the Patriots, who I'm not sure the Patriots are a great football team, but man, watch the way they're playing right now. It's in a different universe than where the Bengals are today. And it's okay. It just means you're not fixing your problems this year, even if you want to.
I'm done trying to be positive about the Browns. I'm done. I'm over it. I should have just listened to you and everybody else, when it comes to that. But the Shedeur thing's weird, right? Like, it's one thing if you just want to stick with your guy, but like, does it seem messy behind the scenes? He doesn't even refer to Shedeur by his name. He doesn't even reference him. Like, it just seems messy with everything going on in Cleveland right now. I know you've said you don't believe that they're going to make a change anytime soon, but has your opinion changed after watching Dylan Gabriel and your take just on the whole Shedeur cloud? And by the way, there's another cloud coming back. We talked about Joe Burrow's 21-day practice window. Deshaun's very close to having that activated as well. I think this could get even more chaotic and ugly, which is entertaining in content at least.
Yeah, there's a very real world where Deshaun Watson is the starting quarterback in the Browns next year. Like, think about that. Like, that's his cap hit, for anyone that hasn't looked, his cap hit next year is $80 million. And the funny thing is, if they trade him post June 1st designation next year, the cap hit is $80 million. Like, no matter what happens next year, Deshaun is going to cost the Browns roughly $80 million. Like, this is a wild, wild west that we're in. Nothing's changed because I think, honestly, they dug in on we're going to give Dylan Gabriel a chance. We believed Dylan Gabriel's better. We're going to give him a chance to develop. I mean, would we be, are we talking about pulling J.J. McCarthy? J.J. McCarthy's played 2.5 games as a starter in the NFL, and some of it's been okay, and most of it's been kind of meh. I don't know. Like, it just takes a while for quarterbacks to develop. I think they're trying to give Dylan Gabriel the most equity they can. But also, they were stupid for bringing Shador in the first place. Like, you drafted him in the 5th round, and you created this question the day that you did that. And that's what the entire organization should have understood. Unfortunately, like I've said to you before, if the headline was 5th round drafted quarterback not getting a shot at game reps, who cares? Like, not another team would be talking about our quarterback we drafted in the 5th round isn't getting a shot in the game. Okay. If the other headline is 3rd round quarterback not ceding job to 5th round quarterback in draft, who cares? The reason people care is because people are convinced that Shador Sanders isn't a 5th round draft pick. To which I would say, even if you believe in collusion, and even if you believe in sending a message, and even if you believe that teams will turn around and sabotage anything, the one thing owners are at their core is wildly competitive. You will never convince me that 32 owners passed on Shador over and over and over and over and over. That's 5 times again, just to make sure that they sent him a message. At some point, you can murder somebody and the NFL will put you back on the lineup if it helps you win a football game. There are women beaters and rapists that actively play every single Sunday. The NFL does not care who you are or where you're from if it can win you a football game. I would buy that the league was sending a message night 1. Fine. But the minute he was available in the 3rd round and people weren't taking him, as tough as this is for anybody to believe, I believe that the league was making a statement about what they think his abilities are. And part of the reason I don't think there's a press to put Shador in is that there's no empirical proof anywhere that Shador is actually worth putting in. Like, I do not believe that the 2-time coach of the year is just being stubborn and is going to get himself fired out of pure principle because he doesn't want to play Shador Sanders. I don't believe he's looking at his family saying, I know you guys want to live this life, but I'd rather uproot my entire family and make sure that over 100 people lose their jobs so I can send a message to Shador Sanders. And that's what happens when a coach gets fired. I don't buy the conspiracy theories as much as people want to stack them.
Last thing before we let you go, and I'm asking this question to you to get the attention of the guy to my left. Are you a Pete Carroll fan? Are you a Pete Carroll fan right now?
Oh, Pete Carroll, the legacy. I'm a huge fan and respecter of Pete Carroll, the legacy. Pete Carroll, the Raiders fan, is a disaster, right? Like, this is the worst case scenario. You signed a quarterback that was not young, and you put him with your coach that's not young. And as I've told you before, look, the last 2 people, non-political, the last 2 people elected to run the United States of America were both older than Pete Carroll. So if you can run the country, you can probably run a football team. But now, if you're being real for the Raiders, the only answer is a complete rebuild, particularly offensively. And that means probably trying to draft a quarterback if there's one in this year's draft. Do you want a 780-year-old Pete Carroll responsible for the next 3 years' development of a young quarterback? Feels really weird to me, man. So I respect the hell out of Pete Carroll, but this has been a disaster for the Raiders. I think the only solution is the inevitable. It's one and done. I think Pete walks away at the end of the year and says, hey, this we're not going to be able to get this turned around, and the Raiders do a wholesale reset. Brian
Daboll, then who do you take?
Brian Daboll is actually an interesting. I just don't know that Daboll. But I like Clint Kubiak a lot, the offensive coordinator in Seattle. I think he's a good coach. He's going to get a lot of run this year. For the Giants shop, somebody asked me this earlier, but like, if I was hiring in the AFC West particularly, I'd be calling Spags. Spags isn't exactly a young in himself. I think he's 65. But Steve Spagnuolo is the defense coordinator of the Kansas City Chiefs. He knows my division in and out. He knows how to win around programs. He actually, when he was the head coach in St. Louis, the Rams were a disaster for a million other reasons. I'd bring in Spags, and I'd let him take over my defense as a head coach, and I'd let him hire the young, hot offensive coordinator out of college that's going to be my new quarterback guru for Fernando Mendoza when he's the inevitable starter for the Raiders next year.
Yeah, that way you get that one nice drive or two in the 4th quarter after a pick and no touchdowns and 3.5.
And Heisman, he wins the Heisman. That's only going to make it even worse. There's this Heisman moment every time, yeah.
All right, good stuff. Jason Fitz, Yahoo Sports. Jason, you the man. I appreciate your time as always.
Appreciate you, my friend. Have a great week.
All right, good stuff. It's the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun, food, sports, and spirits. We'll be right back.
That's 864-2722. Online at lanceroofing.com.
All right, everybody, we welcome you back. It's the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun, food, sports, and spirits. College basketball last night. Not a good night for our teams here in the Miami Valley. Dayton heading to Cincinnati last night. They trailed 17-2 at one point, a horrific first half. They did come climbing back a bit. They ended up trailing 33-26 at halftime, and the Flyers get outscored by the Bearcats 41-36 in the second half. They lose on the road at Cincinnati 74-62. The Dayton Flyers, of course. We know, I like the non-con schedule for UD. They're going to have a chance. I think they have, Bethune-Cookman coming up or whoever. I mean, they have them. Yeah, Bethune-Cookman coming up on the 15th at UD Arena. And then they're going to be at Marquette. All right, they have Georgetown coming up here, at the end of the month. They will have Virginia at home. They have Florida State at home. But they're going to have to show some major improvement because I do know Cincinnati, they're solid, but for them to go and lose against Cincinnati with the heavy Flyer fan presence the way that they did, I don't know. This roster, I think it's a balanced roster. I think that they have a very good starting five. I just don't think they have a lot of depth, and I don't think they have a good coach. So that's just my take. I'm not changing that. I will stick to that. I will say that every single day until UD has a new coach, but that's besides the point. Wright State, they lose by 10 last night at home against Toledo. Wright State had a very good first half. They were up 39-34, and within a blink of an eye, Toledo just got hot. Toledo had Austin Parks. He's a kid from St. Mary's, Ohio. For you Flyer fans, if you remember Mark Ashman. Mark Ashman played at St. Mary's back in his day before going to UD, of course. But Austin Parks played at St. Mary's and then originally went to Ohio State. Didn't get playing time there for Chris Holtman, entered the portal, and I think the MAC is the perfect spot for him because that kid dominated yesterday. I mean, he hitting threes. He was hitting shots all over the floor. 14 points yesterday, 6 of 7 from the floor, shot 85%. I think he made the right choice to go there. But unfortunately, Wright State loses 81-71, both local teams. Not a good night. Not a good night for college basketball fans here in the Miami Valley. As far as Ohio State is concerned, look, they haven't played anyone of substance yet, but they had App State last night, 75-53, the final. And you look at that matchup. So Ohio State's going to have Notre Dame coming up here at the end of the week, 75-53, the final. Brandon Knoll, who played at Wright State last year, led Ohio State in scoring with 17 points. He was 8 of 10 from the field and had a few rebounds as well. So we're going to get a chance to see just how good this Jake Diebler Buckeye team is here. They have Notre Dame coming up. They'll be at Pitt and then Big Ten play. Right off the bat, early December, they'll be at Northwestern. They have Illinois, West Virginia, too. Non-Big Ten opponent, of course, North Carolina. So that's all coming up for Jake Diebler and the Buckeyes. And we have all Buckeye games and all Wright State games on the hardwood for you here on 1410 ESPN Radio and on 101.5 The Fridge. So keep that in mind. While we're on the topic of college basketball, I thought this was interesting. So Rick Pitino recently went on the Dan Dockett show and criticized ESPN's coverage of gambling. And I think, look, there's a lot of this sports betting investigation does stem back a good chunk. There's a couple players, including Adam Jai, who plays for Dayton, or at least is on the roster. He has not been cleared yet. But there's a handful of players going back to his time at Iona that is kind of wrapped up in this investigation that's going on with the NCAA right now. And we assume it's just the NCAA. We don't know how much higher it goes up than that. But we know Adam Jai, who transferred from Iona, is caught up in this, or at least caught up in the investigation part. It's not fair to say he's caught up in anything. They haven't been caught guilty of doing anything. Technically, they're being investigated. But I find it very rich that Rick Pitino is being as outspoken on this, because this is what I think is going on, because I think he's kind of letting everybody know the things about this that he doesn't like. It may not be Rick Pitino that's caught up in this. I don't think he had anything to do with this, but I do think it has something to do with some of his players from Iona. Very well might be Adam Jai, who's currently on the Dayton roster. Don't know his involvement. Know he's being investigated. Hopefully it's nothing. But I thought this was interesting. Rick Pitino said this on ESPN on the Dan Dockett show. He was criticizing ESPN. He goes, ESPN's on TV. They're arguing over these things happening in college athletics right now. He goes, but let's break away now for FanDuel. Let's break away for MGM. I do think it's good to let the players wager on professional sports because I think that they're doing it now, and I'd rather them do that than getting in trouble. I think they do it through their friends with a bet on an NFL game or whatever it may be. But I don't like these prop bets at all. I don't think that's good for the game, and it tempts players' friends. Do you think you can get 10 rebounds tonight? That sort of thing. This was a quote from Rick Pitino. I think he's basically telling you what the players that he had at Iona, including possibly Adam Jai, are being investigated for. Again, allegedly. Allegedly, is what these guys are being investigated for. They're being tied into the sports gambling side of things. So while they're they're not allegedly being investigated for it. They're being investigated for allegedly being caught up in this. And it's going to go back. And I think that what Rick Pitino is doing right now is basically laying the groundwork. Man, here's what I'm concerned about. I think that the friends of the players are asking them, hey, do you think you can get 10 rebounds tonight? Do you think that, hey, how good is the defense of the team you're going up against? Do you think you could score against them? It's that type of thing. And by the way, I believe that's the case. I actually do believe that that's the case. I don't know how. It's human nature. I don't think that there's a player in college basketball out there that hasn't had a friend or a family member try this in some capacity. It's up to the player to be an adult and to put up boundaries and say, we're not going there. What I'm tired of is, and you guys know my take on this, I am so tired of people doing the whole lame ESPN. They sit there and criticize this stuff, but then they have a sponsor. They have a segment sponsored by MGM. They have a segment sponsored by FanDuel. Well, this isn't hard to figure out, people. You guys are all hypocrites. I'm pretty sure that if a local player got in trouble for a DUI, I would crack this mic and say drinking and driving is bad. That is absolutely horrible. All right, when we come back, our keys to the game presented by Budweiser. You guys aren't going to be mad at that, are you? So why are you mad at this? Yes, ESPN, Yahoo Sports, any network out there is going to crack the mic and say, yes, athletes should not bet on their sport. Athletes should not bet on sports if that's against the rules, and shame on them for doing it. All right, more of our FanDuel top 5, whatever, when we come back. That's the same thing. You guys pick and choose what you want to get your panties all tied up about, and I'm so sick and tired of it. Knock it off. You guys are hypocrites. If you and I hear a lot of you say this, I think it's wrong that ESPN's caught up with FanDuel and, ESPN bets being absorbed by DraftKings. I just think they shouldn't be anywhere near it. Why? Because it's wrong. Are these athletes hypocritical? The Reds are hypocritical. They keep, baseball is hypocritical. Baseball's not hypocritical. It's actually, it makes good business sense. Hey, we're going to get in bed with DraftKings and FanDuel, and as a sport, we're going to make a lot of money so that you crybaby entitled athletes can get a lot of money in your deals, by the way, because of this money that's up here. But we just ask that you don't bet on baseball. Can you guys do that? Yeah, I think that's a sacrifice that we can make in a sport where we have guys making $700 million freaking dollars. I think it's a sacrifice that they can make. Stop trying to make these athletes out to be victims, because they're not. It makes sense why you don't want your athletes betting on the sport that they play in. It makes sense for the very same reason that we're seeing the mess in college basketball, which is why I'm also having a hard time understanding why these athletes can't bet on the NBA or the NFL. Hey, you can't bet on college basketball. You want to bet on the NBA? Go ahead. You're an adult. Go do it. But I tell you what, don't break our rules on betting on college basketball, and I think that's fair. Do I think that these guys are placing bets through their friends' sports books? Oh, absolutely. Because they're idiots. Do I think that athletes drink and drive? Oh, yes, I do, because they're idiots. Do I think that athletes think that the rules don't pertain to them? Oh, yes, I do, because most of them are idiots. They are self-absorbed, and they think that the rules don't pertain to them. And not all athletes are. Let me get that clear. I'm just saying most athletes think that they are above the rules, that they're above the law, that they're this, that, and the other. They're very entitled, most of them. And at some point, we got to stop. We got to take this away because the athletes are going to do this. Or how about you just look at the athletes and say, stop being a bunch of dumbasses? It's that simple. I'm this quote from Rick Pitino to me. All he is basically saying is, I think he's just putting it out there right now that he knows that he has some former players that are about to get tagged by the NCAA with this stuff. And I think he's trying to he's distancing himself from it. Hey, I think they need to get rid of these prop bets because I think what's happening is I think the friends of the players are asking this. He's basically telling you what his former players are probably getting investigated for. And I'm saying keep this quote in mind. I hope Adam Jai didn't do anything. But again, this is going back to Iona, and it's not just Adam Jai. There's some other players, which is why about a year ago, towards the back end of last basketball season, there was a lot of rumblings being put out there that Rick Pitino is somehow tied to a sports gambling drama that's going to potentially be coming out within the next calendar year. It does involve Iona. It doesn't sound like it involves Rick Pitino, but it was his program. And I think Rick Pitino knows some of this stuff's about to come out, and I think that this quote is basically him telling everybody, hey, here's what I think is happening. Nonetheless. All right, I'm Justin Kinner. It's the Justin Kinner Show, 1410 ESPN Radio. We're going to, of course, hit station identification and take a few moment break, and then we're going to talk some Cincinnati Reds baseball when we come back. Terry Francona was up for Manager of the Year in the National League. He did not win National League Manager of the Year. He did come in second. He did receive a couple first-place votes. But, that just shows the respect that the writers and people have for Terry Francona around the league. How much respect does his own organization have for him? Will they change things up now that they have Terry Francona as their manager moving forward, heading into their first real full offseason together? We'll find out, and we'll discuss when we come back. It's the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers.
Dayton's radio home for Buckeyes football.